There are stories that are not meant to be told. They live in the quiet corners of the world, in the cold case files that police departments lock away, and in the frantic, half-finished journals of people who saw too much. This is one of those stories. It's about a thing that has no proper name, a thing that those who have studied it from the safety of distance have come to call, simply, the unknown. This is not a ghost story, though it involves the voices of the dead. This is not a tale of a wild animal, though it is a story about a predator of the highest and most terrible order. This is the story of a wound in the world, and the monster that crawled out of it. Our story begins, as so many strange stories do, in a small, forgotten town where nothing important was ever supposed to happen. The town was called Greenville. It was a sleepy little place, the kind of town with one main street, a single traffic light, and a population that knew everyone else's business. But a sickness began to spread through Greenville, not a sickness of the body, but a sickness of absence. People started to disappear, and they did it in a way that defied all logic and reason. This is where a woman named Olivia entered the picture. Olivia was a private investigator, but her specialty was the profoundly weird, the cases that made regular cops throw up their hands and walk away. She was drawn to Greenville by a pattern she saw in the news clippings, a quiet thread of wrongness that no one else had bothered to pull. It started with a man named David King. David was a local tough guy, a former rugby player who had a reputation for being hot-headed but fiercely loyal. He was not the kind of man who would just pack up and leave without a word to anyone. But one night, he vanished from his own locked apartment. The police found no signs of a struggle, no broken windows, no kicked-in doors. The door was bolted from the inside. His wallet and keys were on the counter, and a half-eaten pizza was getting cold on the coffee table in front of a blaring television. It was as if he had been sitting there one moment and had simply ceased to exist the next. The only piece of physical evidence that defied explanation was a strange, slimy residue on the carpet, a substance that evaporated before the forensics team could get a proper sample. The town buzzed with rumors for a week, but eventually the official story became that David had skipped town to avoid some trouble. Then, a week to the day after his disappearance, his next-door neighbor, a young woman named Meg, made a terrified call to the police. She was sobbing, barely coherent, swearing that David was inside her house. She said she could hear his voice clear as day, calling her name from her dark, empty basement. The police came, searched the house thoroughly, and found nothing. They told her it was just grief, her mind playing tricks on her, and they left. But Olivia, when she later read this report, knew it was something more. She had seen this detail before, this cruel postscript to a person's disappearance. She drove to Greenville and started digging into the town's history, pulling old records and talking to frightened locals. She found other cases, other disappearances that the police had never linked together. There was a quiet high school student, Feng Min, who was obsessed with video games. She vanished from her bedroom one night, and days later, her roommate heard the frantic, distinct clicking of Feng's unique mechanical keyboard coming from behind her locked closet door. There was an anxious, timid office worker named Dwight, who was known for his nervous habits. He disappeared after working late, and the next morning his boss received a voicemail that was nothing but Dwight's signature shaky, fearful breathing for a full minute. The pattern was monstrously clear. The unknown did not just take people, it studied them, it learned them. It then used the most intimate and familiar parts of its victims, their voices, their sounds, to psychologically torture its next targets. It was a hunter that seasoned its meat with fear before it ever went in for the kill. Olivia's investigation, a trail of fear and whispers, led her to one central location. It was a place that seemed to be the heart of the darkness, the epicenter of the phenomenon, an old abandoned movie theater on the outskirts of town. The Greenville Square Theater had been a palace in its day, but now it was a rotting carcass of a building. Olivia's journal entries from her first visit are filled with a sense of overpowering dread. She described the air inside as thick and unnaturally cold, carrying a metallic smell like old blood and ozone. The silence was the worst part, a deep, profound quiet that felt heavier than sound, pressing in on her from all sides. She wrote that the building felt wrong, not just old or abandoned, but fundamentally incorrect. It was, in her words, a place where the skin of the world was stretched too thin. Her search of the dilapidated building eventually led her to the projectionist's booth, a small dusty room high above the empty seats. There, tucked away in a corner, she found a small, rust-eaten metal box. Inside that box was a collection of old cassette tapes. These were not movies. They were the audio recordings of other people who had been drawn into the theater's orbit, a library of last words and final moments. To listen to these tapes is to invite a piece of that theater's darkness into your own mind. Each one is a small, perfect capsule of horror. One tape labeled Security Walkthrough is the audio log of a night watchman hired by the property owners to keep kids out. The man, who identifies himself as Gary, starts his recording with a bored, tired voice. He complains about the cold and the weird drafts in the building. He mentions finding strange, slimy trails on the floor that he assumes are from snails, but notes that there's no way for snails to get into the locked building. His tone shifts on his second-to-last entry. He says he keeps hearing a strange, low humming sound coming from the backstage area, a sound that makes the fillings in his teeth ache. His final entry is short and breathless. He says he's going to check the generator room in the sub-basement because he can hear what sounds like a little girl crying down there. He says it sounds just like his own daughter when she was small. The tape then records 15 minutes of dead air, followed by a sudden, wet, snapping sound, and then the hiss of an empty tape. Another tape is a recording made by a local historian, a man named Benedict. He was documenting the theater's history, and his voice is initially full of academic excitement. He talks about the theater's unique architecture and its strange history of financial troubles and unexplained accidents. He mentions a local legend that the theater was built on an old, forgotten burial ground. His last recording is very different. His voice is a hushed whisper, filled with a mix of terror and awe. He says he has seen something in the theater, something he calls the Hollow Man. He describes a tall, pale figure that moves in the shadows on the stage, a thing that walks like a broken puppet. He says he tried to take a picture of it, but his camera malfunctioned. The last thing he says on the tape is, "It's looking at me, it has my father's eyes." But the most infamous and disturbing recording is the one Olivia found, the one from the two teenage girls, Sarah and Jessica. It's a phone call, recorded on an old answering machine. It starts so normally, so innocently. Jessica is telling a long, rambling story about a teacher at school, and you can hear her friend Sarah laughing on the other end of the line. Then Jessica stops mid-sentence. She asks, "Hey, are you okay? Your voice sounds really weird, like you're talking through a fan or something." The voice that is supposed to be Sarah's lets out a laugh, but the laugh is distorted. It's a mix of a young girl's giggle and a wet, gurgling sound like someone drowning. Then the voice says a sentence that is impossible. A sentence that is so wrong it feels like it could curdle the blood. It says, "The skin is new, but it's a good fit. A little tight around the joints, but I'll get used to it." There is a long, terrible silence on the line. You can hear Jessica's sharp, panicked intake of breath, the sound of a human mind trying to process something it was never meant to comprehend. She whispers, a tiny, broken sound, "Who is this?" Her question is answered not with words, but with a high-pitched, piercing scream of pure terror that is abruptly cut short. This is the creature's method. It is a predator that uses mimicry not just for camouflage, but for psychological destruction. Olivia theorized that the creature was not of this earth. Her notes became obsessed with a concept she called the fold, her term for a tear or a weak spot in the fabric of our reality. She believed our world was not alone, that it was just one of many dimensions, and that in certain places the walls between these worlds were thin. The Greenville Square Theater was one of those places, a doorway, and something had found the handle. Her final journal entry is a chilling testament to her obsession. She had decided to go back into the theater one last time, armed with a custom-built camera rig designed to capture light and energy far beyond the normal human spectrum. She wanted to see the monster in its true form. She wrote, "Knowledge is the only weapon against fear. I have to know what this thing is, even if the knowledge destroys me." It appears that it did. Olivia was never seen again. Her disappearance just another cold case in a town full of them. But her car was found parked near the theater, and a colleague later recovered her equipment from the dusty lobby. The camera was smashed, but its memory card was intact, though heavily corrupted. From that card, a data recovery specialist was able to pull a handful of distorted, glitchy images. They are the only known photographs of the unknown, and they are the stuff of nightmares. The creature has a human-like silhouette, and that is what makes it so profoundly, existentially terrifying. It is a mockery of us, a funhouse mirror reflection that shows us a version of humanity that is sick and broken. Its skin is a pale, waxy white, like the flesh of a drowned man. It appears to be stretched impossibly tight over a skeletal frame that is all wrong, with joints that bend at angles that would shatter human bones. It moves with a jerky, unnatural gait, a convulsive twitching that seems to defy the laws of physics and biology. It is not walking, it is lurching, each movement a small, violent glitch in the world. Its head is tilted at a severe, permanent angle, as if its neck has been violently snapped and then frozen in place. And its face is a perfect mask of agony. Its mouth is stretched wide, wider than any human mouth should be, and it is frozen open in a silent, unending scream. Inside that mouth are not human teeth, but rows of long, needle-like shards, like a deep-sea predator. This appearance is a direct attack on the deepest parts of our brain. It is a living, breathing embodiment of a concept known as the uncanny valley. The uncanny valley is a term from robotics and aesthetics. It describes the deep feeling of revulsion and fear we experience when we see something that looks almost human, but is just slightly off. Our brains are hardwired to recognize human faces and bodies. When we see something that has all the right parts, but in all the wrong places, our instincts scream at us that this thing is diseased, dangerous, or dead. The unknown is a creature that seems to have crawled out of the deepest part of that uncanny valley. It is a walking, screaming red flag to our primal survival instincts. A horrifying theory, one that Olivia herself was beginning to consider, is that the creature's skin is not its own, that the pale, stretched flesh is actually the flayed skin of its most recent victim. This would explain the tightness, the awkward fit. It would mean the creature is wearing a human body like a suit that is too small for the monstrous thing that lives inside it. This makes it a literal skin stealer, a monster from our oldest and darkest folklore. It is the skinwalker, the doppelganger, the changeling, all rolled into one modern nightmare. This creature is not just a visual horror, it is an active and deadly hunter, and the fragmented reports of survivors have allowed us to piece together a profile of its terrifying abilities. It can produce a toxic bioluminescent goo from its body. A leaked, heavily redacted government document concerning the Greenville incident refers to this substance by the codename UVX. This UVX can be launched as a projectile, and it behaves in an unnatural way. It can ricochet off surfaces at impossible angles, making it a deadly, unpredictable weapon in enclosed spaces. Anyone hit by this substance experiences a sudden crippling weakness. Survivors describe it as feeling like all the strength has been instantly sucked from their muscles, replaced by a deep, aching fatigue and a dizzying sense of vertigo. A second hit from the UVX, while in this weakened state, is devastating. The body's nervous system seems to overload, leading to immediate collapse and paralysis, leaving the victim helpless. But its most bizarre and psychologically damaging ability is the creation of what survivors call fleshy effigies. The creature can, seemingly at will, manifest perfect stationary duplicates of itself. These silent clones appear out of thin air, standing in hallways, fields, or rooms. They are perfect copies of the monster, frozen in that silent scream, radiating an almost tangible aura of pure hatred. Imagine running for your life through a dark forest, and you see one of these things standing motionless between two trees. For a heart-stopping moment, you have no way of knowing if it's a harmless statue or the real monster, waiting to pounce. This is a tactic of pure psychological warfare. It pollutes the environment with its own horrifying image, creating a battlefield where there is no safe direction, no moment of rest. The true horrifying purpose of these effigies is their connection to the creature's movement. Multiple credible reports state that the creature can instantly teleport its physical body to the location of any one of its clones. A person could be watching an effigy from 100 yards away, thinking they are safe. Then in the blink of an eye, the effigy will dissolve in a shower of gore, and the real, moving, hunting creature will be standing in its place. This is a fundamental violation of the laws of space and distance. It makes the creature seem omnipresent, inescapable. There is, however, one sliver of hope, one rumored weakness. Survivors have claimed that it is possible to destroy these effigies. By approaching one of the terrifying statues and performing what they describe as an act of focused will, a person can cause it to destabilize and melt into a puddle of harmless goo. Successfully doing so seems to grant the person a temporary but total immunity to the weakening effects of the UVX toxin. This creates a constant, terrible choice for anyone being hunted. Do you risk getting close to a horrifying clone to protect yourself from the poison, or do you just keep running and pray you can dodge the green, bouncing death? The creature also has a strange and frightening relationship with technology, especially electricity. This has been noted in several incidents that took place in industrial areas. It seems to gain a burst of unnatural speed and power immediately after striking a running electrical generator or a large piece of active machinery. It is as if it can absorb raw electrical energy and use it to supercharge its own unnatural biology. This makes places of human industry and power its preferred hunting grounds. A factory or a power plant, places that should symbolize human control over the environment, become its personal playground. It also possesses an even more insidious technological ability, a form of sensory manipulation. It can somehow imprint its own terrifying aura onto an inanimate object. Survivors describe the feeling of being near the creature as a palpable dread that manifests as an audible hallucination, like a frantic, panicked heartbeat inside their own skull. The creature can touch an object, and that object will then radiate that same feeling, that same phantom heartbeat. While its victim is staring at a harmless piece of machinery, their senses screaming that the monster is right there, the creature itself becomes completely silent and undetectable. It can then flank and ambush its prey, who has been tricked into looking the wrong way by their own fear. Finally, there is its reported ability to directly sabotage technology. Survivors who tried to repair vehicles or generators to escape have all described this phenomenon with chilling consistency. If the creature touches a machine that is being worked on, it can cause a massive, instantaneous reversal of any progress made. A complex engine that was seconds away from starting will suddenly break down, as if time itself was flowing backwards for its internal components. This effect is reportedly amplified by the emotional state of the people nearby. The more fear and panic in the air, the more effectively the creature can impose its will of chaos and decay on human technology. So the ultimate question remains, what is this thing? Where did it come from? The few researchers who have dared to study this phenomenon are deeply divided, with three main theories emerging from the darkness. The first is the extraterrestrial hypothesis. This is the theory that the unknown is an alien life form, a scout or a biological probe from a world beyond our solar system. Its utterly alien biology, its non-human form, and its abilities that defy our understanding of physics all lend weight to this idea. The codename UVX, which some speculate is short for unidentified venomous xenomorph, also points in this direction. If it is an alien, its motives are a complete and terrifying mystery. Is it a soldier in a silent invasion, a scientist performing a brutal form of field research, or is it just a lost animal, hunting and killing out of instinct in a world it does not understand? The second major theory is that the unknown is a man-made monster. This theory suggests that it is the product of a secret and profoundly unethical scientific experiment conducted by humans. Perhaps a shadowy biotech corporation or a clandestine military project was attempting to create the ultimate biological weapon. They succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, but they created a monster they could not contain or control. This would explain its codename and its strange affinity for man-made technology. It would be a child of science, a living weapon born in a sterile lab, now set loose upon the messy, organic world of its creators. This theory paints the creature in a strangely tragic light. It is not a demon from hell, but a victim of human ambition, a being of pure pain and confusion, lashing out at the world that gave it such a horrible existence. The third and by far the most existentially terrifying theory is the one that Olivia herself was developing before she disappeared. This is the interdimensional hypothesis, the theory of the fold. This theory posits that our reality, our universe, is not the only one, that it is just one layer in a vast multi-layered cosmos, a single page in an infinite book of realities. And in certain places, like the Greenville Square Theatre, the paper of our page is thin. The walls between our world and other stranger worlds are weak and can be torn open. The unknown is a native of one of these other dimensions, a place with different laws of physics, different rules for life, a place where a creature of such walking, screaming horror is just a normal part of the local fauna. The theatre was not a haunted house, it was a beachhead, a doorway through which this thing could step from its reality into ours. This is the most frightening theory of all because it implies that the unknown is not unique. If one creature found a way through, it means there could be more, countless others, pressing against the thin veil of our world, looking for other doors, other tiers, other ways to get in. It reframes the horror from a single, isolated monster to a vast cosmic threat. We are not just dealing with a creature, we are dealing with the horrifying possibility that our entire world is fragile, permeable, and constantly brushing up against universes of pure nightmare. The terror of the unknown is a complex and perfectly crafted cocktail of our deepest fears. It is the primal fear of the mimic, the doppelganger, the monster that steals the faces and voices of those we love to turn them into weapons against us. It is the biological revulsion of the uncanny valley, the sickening sight of the human form twisted and broken into an object of pure body horror. It is the intellectual dread of the incomprehensible, the chilling, mind-breaking reality of facing a predator whose motives and origins are a complete and total mystery. And above all, it is the simple, powerful fear of the unknown itself. The name is a constant nagging reminder that we are facing a question that has no answer, a monster that cannot be defined. We do not know what it wants. We do not know its ultimate origins. We do not know how to reliably kill it or how many more of them there might be. The Greenville incident is the only one we have been able to document so extensively. But how many other, smaller incidents have been brushed aside by local authorities as strings of bad luck or unrelated tragedies? How many other small, forgotten towns have a whispered history of people just vanishing into thin air? How many other people have heard the voice of a lost loved one calling to them from an empty room and have convinced themselves it was just the wind or a trick of their grieving mind? The unknown is more than just a single monster. It is a terrifying concept made flesh, a walking, screaming piece of evidence that we are not alone in this universe and that we are not safe in our own homes. So the next time you find yourself alone in a quiet, dark place, listen carefully. Listen for the sounds that do not belong, the sounds that are just a little bit wrong. And if you ever hear a familiar voice calling your name, a voice that has no reason to be there, a voice that belongs to someone who is gone, do not answer it. Do not follow it. Do not trust it for a single second. Just turn and run. Because you can never be certain who or what has learned how to sound just like someone you love, and you do not want to be there when you find out.